learned about retelling, and we said when you retell, you describe what happens in a story in order. We say first, next, then, and then last for the end. And we can use our fingers in our own words to say first this happened, then next, and then after that, and then last. Okay, so I'm going to read a story called Bonaparte Falls Apart. And when we're done, you're going to retell what happened in the beginning. So what happened in the beginning? Remember, the beginning usually tells us what the problem is. Because remember in our story the other day, what story was it? Oh, Turkey Trouble. His problem was he was going to get eaten for Thanksgiving. So we'll have to figure out what the problem for Bonaparte is. Then next is how he tries to fix it. And at the end is how he fixes it. So let's see what happens in Bonaparte Falls Apart. Bonaparte was falling to pieces. And this really shook him up. Look, he's missing his hand. Especially when he rode his bike, or played catch, or visited the doctor's office. Sometimes his bones rolled away, and it took him forever to find them. His head rolled away. What will happen when school starts? Bonaparte asked his friends as his hand clacked to the sidewalk. I'm falling apart. Everyone will make fun of me. Okay, that's his problem, right? His problem is he's falling apart. Doesn't want to be made fun of. I have an idea, says Frankie Stein, clicking Bonaparte's hand into place. Let's glue and screw your bones together. That's a pretty good idea. So Frankie Stein glued and screwed and screwed and glued, but when he was finished, Bonaparte couldn't move. I can't walk, he said. Oh, man, that's not good. Frankie Stein had to undo all his hard work. I have another idea, said Blackie Widow. I'll spin and pin a web around you. So Blackie Widow spinned and pinned and pinned and spun. But when she was finished, look up here. That ain't gonna work. Bonaparte was all tangled up. I'm a mess, he said. Blackie Widow had to undo all her hard work. I have the best idea of all, said Mamicula. I'll wrap and strap your bones in place. So Mamicula wrapped and strapped and strapped and wrapped, but when he was finished, Bonaparte couldn't see. Where is everybody? He asked in a muffled voice. Mamicula had to undo all his hard work. Time passed, and Bonaparte was so worried about school that his head fell off. Frankie Stein picked it up and set it back in place. Before school starts, we will bone up on other ideas, he said. We'll leave no bone unturned, said Blackie Widow. No bones about it, said Mamicula. They're good friends, aren't they? But none of the ideas they came up with seemed just right. Until a dog ran by with a bone in his mouth. That bone lover would be perfect for Bonaparte, said Mamicula. So they ran after the dog. What do dogs like to fetch? Bones. And brought him to Bonaparte. What a fetching dog, Bonaparte exclaimed. You can teach him to retrieve your bones, said Frankie Stein. Bonanza, said Bonaparte. You are my bona fide friends. He named the dog Mandible, and he spent the next 2 weeks training him, so he had him go fetch all of his bones that fell off. When school started, Bonaparte was still a little worried about what the other kids might think. But Bonaparte was a home run hit at recess. The dog gets his hand when it flew off. A jaw-dropping sensation at lunch. His jaw came out. There goes Mandible getting his jaw. And rib-tickling wonder in science class. Oh, he had to go fetch his rib. Bonaparte could hang loose without anyone making fun of him, and this made him very happy. Uh-oh, clickety-clack. Look, Mandible's right there. The end. Okay, so let's use our fingers. First, what was our problem, Wyatt? All right, number one, he kept falling apart. All right, number one is that Bonaparte kept falling apart. First, he kept falling apart, and he needed help before school started. Then, what happened? Heather? Yeah. What was the first thing they did to fix him? Gracie? Yep, they tried to glue him. Then what happened? Grant?
The spider webbed him?
Yeah, the spider tried to put him in a web to hold them together. That didn't work. Then what, Chase? No. No. They hammered and glued him the first time. Then they spin him in the web. Then what happened? Xavier?
They wrapped him in. The mummy wrapped him.
Yeah, the money wrapped him up and that didn't work. So those were the 3 things they tried to do, right? That was it, right? That was all they tried to do?
No.
Was there one more?
The dog. The dog.
Well, that was the end. And then last, the dog was fetching his bones, and that solved his problem. And he was able to go to school and not get made fun of. So the first was he didn't have any bones, or his bones kept falling off. He was falling apart. Then they tried to glue him, and then they tried to spin him into a web, and then they tried to make him a mummy, and then last they got a dog to help him help him fetch his bones so he could stay together. So we're going to do that in our retell first, and then next you're going to have to put all those things that happened. Next they glued him, then they put him in a web, then they made him into a mummy, and then last the dog. They got the dog to fetch. Then after we do that, you're going to tell me what the problem in the story is. Do the characters solve the problem? Why or why not? How would you have solved the problem? What would you have done for Bonaparte? I want to know what you would have done. And then draw me a picture of what you would have done. Okay? So first we're going to do the retell part. And then we'll do the problem and solution.